the show that never ends. I'm Brandon Ware. You're watching Angel 65, my channel for all things music related, music reviews, and my own music posts. And this is Chapter 13, the final chapter in the Beatles Deep Dive. After covering the original stereo and mono mixes, the anthology documentary, archival releases, and then all of the super deluxe box sets which have come out over the past few years, this last video is going to tie up some loose ends and talk about some other remix compilations that may or may not be worth owning. So we'll start in 1999 with this, the Yellow Submarine Songtrack. This is a 15-track CD containing remixed songs of all of the songs that appeared in the film Yellow Submarine, because the original Yellow Submarine album only contained 6 songs, 4 of which were new. And then the B-side of that record featured orchestral music by George Martin created for the film score, so it did not feature all of the songs that were actually used in the film. This one has, I believe, all of them, if not most of them. So, in track order, we have Yellow Submarine, Hey Bulldog, Eleanor Rigby, Love You Too, All Together Now, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, Think for Yourself, Sgt. Pepper, With a Little Help from My Friends, Baby You're a Rich Man, Only a Northern Song, All You Need Is Love, When I'm 64, Nowhere Man, and It's All Too Much. So, this was released in 1999, but this is a more recent reissue. I'm not sure if it's remastered or not. It does say published 1999, so I'm guessing this is probably the same master as before because it was already high quality, but it's clearly designed to match the 2009 reissues, as you can tell by the Beatles logo right there in the corner. I got this right when I got back into the Beatles in 2021 and just decided to go complete my collection with all the official releases that I did not yet have. So, what do I think of this? Well, at that point I hadn't heard all of the remixes of Sgt. Pepper and the White Album and stuff. Well, there's nothing from the White Album on here, but Sgt. Pepper and Revolver and stuff. So I think this is quite an improvement on the original stereo mixes. I'm not sure if it's enough of an improvement to merit having this. It's certainly a nice little companion to the film and the original album. And the one thing on here that's truly awesome is the Only a Northern Song, because this is actually mixed in true stereo. As detailed in the booklet for Yellow Submarine and in the booklet for Mono Masters in the mono box set, they created 8 tracks by synchronizing 2 tape machines, but this is long before SMPTE code and stuff to actually synchronize 2 slave recorders together. So when creating the mixes, they had to actually have both of the machines start at exactly the same time. This was such a haphazard process that only a mono mix was created. This was rectified on the stereo LP by mixing it to fake stereo, so ADT, like spreading the panning, similar to what was done on some of the stuff on the Capitol album's box set when Capitol didn't have proper stereo mixes. The irony is that when creating the mono release of that album, which was only in the US, it was just a fold down mix of the stereo mix. So really the mono mix released of Only a Northern Song at the time was a fake mono mix of a fake stereo mix. And the official mono mix was not released until the revised Yellow Submarine remaster and then the Mono Masters CD, both in 2009. But this CD from 1999 actually has a true stereo mix of Only a Northern Song, and it sounds great. That was a long-winded way of saying this is a true stereo mix, and as far as I know is the only official true stereo mix of the track available on CD. Some of the mixes did sound a bit strange. Really, it was just Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. That sounded a bit strange to me. It just sounded very different from the album mix. It didn't sound as detailed. It sounded like it was missing some stuff, and it was a bit hollow sounding. And I found the same thing to be true when I was watching the film itself. And I don't know if these mixes were used in the film or the revised Blu-ray of the film or not. I didn't A/B them, but that one just stood out to me. It sounded strange, but everything else sounds fine, and it is a nice little compilation. It's certainly not essential, but it's probably more accurate to a Beatles album of the film than the original soundtrack was. That said, I really like the original soundtrack. I loved the score on the second side of it, and I would still probably prefer that over this, because you get the 4 unique tracks plus Yellow Submarine and All You Need Is Love, and then 7 tracks of orchestral score. If you want like a complete soundtrack to the film, though, Songtrack, then this is it. And it's cool, it sounds good, and I can see myself putting it on from time to time. Next up is a far more interesting release, which I would almost say is essential, is this, Love. It is released as a standalone CD and on vinyl, but this is the CD DVD edition. This includes a DVD with a 5.1 mix that I just played today for the first time on my surround system in my new house, though I had done it once before at my previous location. And oh my God, it is absolutely mind-blowing. This is so good. If you're not sure what this is, Giles Martin and George Martin, before he passed away, were commissioned to create a soundtrack to the Cirque du Soleil Love Show. Now, I've never seen that show. I have no idea what it is, what kind of stuff is done, if there's a storyline or anything. I have no idea. It would have been cool if there was like a video of the performance synchronized with the audio, just so I could see what the whole thing was about. Oops. But I don't know what the actual performance is, but I do know that this soundtrack is amazing. So this is all created using multi-tracks from the Beatles, but things are mixed, they're turned backwards, they're sped up, they're slowed down, tracks are blended together, and it's just this crazy montage of Beatles music where different songs merge with different others and certain elements are highlighted, and it's just mind-blowing. Some of the most standout moments, I would say I Am the Walrus, because again, similar to the case with It's Only a Northern Song, the stereo mix of I Am the Walrus that is on the remaster and I believe all prior stereo CDs actually contains fake stereo for about the second half of it, because a radio broadcast was used, it was added during the mixing stage on the mono mix, so the only way to replicate it on the stereo mix was to use the mono mix and switch to fake stereo at that point in the song. And you can hear it if you listen on headphones that it's actually fake stereo, not true stereo. But this is true stereo and 5.1 of I Am the Walrus. Strawberry Fields Forever is insane. It is so cool. It's the full take 27, I believe, at its original key, not the slowed down version that was used to create the Strawberry Fields master single. It's the original take in its original key all the way through to the end, and over the ending there's sound effects from various Beatles tracks, including, remarkably, piggies. They worked piggies in there on top of the Strawberry Fields thing. It's just, it opens with Voices from Because, which fades into Get Back. They use the backwards piano chord from A Day in the Life, which swells into the opening chord of A Hard Day's Night. Then they do the drum solo from the end, and it just goes right into Get Back. And this is one powerhouse of an album. It is absolutely outstanding. I listened to the CD on headphones, and then I listened to the 5.1 mix on my surround sound system. And my goodness, the CD alone is already outstanding, but if you can find this and get the 5.1 mix, it is unbelievable. It is dual layer, so it does have a standard DVD layer with DTS surround, but the DVD layer is lossless surround sound, so that's ideally what you'd want to listen to. I believe I paid like maybe $5 or $6 for this on eBay. It was dead cheap, and it was well worth that and beyond. It is just mind-blowing. Yeah, the standout moments: I Am the Walrus, Strawberry Fields, and the other one is While My Guitar Gently Weeps, because this is not the master take on the White Album of this. This is the demo George recorded on his birthday that's featured on Anthology 3, but with the addition of a string arrangement done by George Martin. And this is the final string arrangement he did for a Beatles track, and it is just gorgeous. It is absolutely beautiful, very emotional, tugs at the heartstrings. What a wonderful moment that is. This is absolutely amazing. I would highly recommend this. And the thing is, I knew of its existence for a long time and waited before I actually got it. And when I did finally pick it up and heard the 5.1 and the stereo mixes, I was beyond blown away. It is absolutely incredible. 5 out of 5 for sure. You must check this out. This is mind-blowing stuff. This is a whole new way to hear some of these songs, and the way they're merged with each other, and the way that certain elements are highlighted and just creating the illusion of like a show and an audience. It's mind-blowing. It actually makes me want to see the show, so I might look that up on YouTube and see if there's like any full recordings of the Cirque du Soleil show, so that I can see what all this music was actually being set to. I'd like to know what the context visually was, but musically alone, it stands out, and it is amazing. I don't know if it's a 100% essential release, but it's pretty damn awesome. You should check it out. And now jumping to fairly recently, 2023, to close out the Giles Martin remixes, we have these. These are the remixed versions of the Red and Blue albums, and each has been expanded to include an additional LP of bonus tracks. Now, we'll start here with the Red album because I have mixed feelings on this. This is done using the same process that was done for Revolver, because up until the tracks from Revolver, no songs from this period had already received a previous remix by Giles Martin. And so these use the demix remix process, which means taking the stems out and separating the individual instruments that would have initially been recorded on a single track and being able to remix them. This is, to me, both good and bad. On Revolver, I think maybe it's less noticeable because they still had multiple generations of tape, and that was already a very layered album anyway, and it was done more subtly. But like the first two tracks here, Love Me Do, Please Please Me, For Me to You, She Loves You, like Love Me Do, For Me to You, and She Loves You were only ever had mono mixes, and so these are in true stereo for the first time. And to hear the individual isolated elements is kind of mind-blowing. At the same time, it's very, very different. It's almost a jarring experience. And in places, it does kind of sound, to me, like some of it could just be my ears, but it sounds like there might be like some digital artifacts there of separating the instruments, because part of the sound of those original tape recordings is the blend of three instruments on one track. And I'm not entirely sure how competent this AI learning software is at separating the stems. By the time you get to Rubber Soul, it's less noticeable and those tracks sound really good. I will say on this, it could just be this particular pressing and not necessarily the mixes, because I haven't listened to digital versions of these mixes. It sounds like the bass is a bit overbearing. There are some places where the bass is it's just too loud. It's just too much, honestly, in my opinion. The Abbey Road remix was like right on the verge, but the bass was better recorded by that point, so you get away with it. On this, it just sounds like the bass is a little muddy and overbearing in places when it's separated out like it is. They didn't have the luxury of boosting the bass that much before, because everything would have been contained on a single track with bass, drums, and guitar, and so boosting one thing means boosting all of them, which is not necessarily what you want to do. So probably the first two sides, I think, sound very strange to me, mixed the way they are. It's good and it's bad, but I wonder if, a part of me wonders if some of it is the computer making up the bits that it can't accurately separate, and if this is actually true to what's on the tape. I guess I haven't beat it with the original mono and stereo mixes, so maybe I should do that to see how close it is, but it just was a bit of a strange experience to me, because honestly, and this is going to sound kind of stupid given how much I just celebrated the Giles Martin remixes, of the previous 5 chapters, but part of the magic of these early Beatles recordings, which had remained largely untouched until now, is that they do kind of sound primitive, and it's the band finding their feet and pushing themselves. Like by the time of Help, they're making really effective use of the 4-track tape, and the 1987 stereo mix, which is what the 2009 remaster is based off, really highlights how well they're using the tape. And the remixes of the One album sound absolutely phenomenal. They really have a nice jangliness and chiminess to them, and I find this sounds a bit muffled in places I'm not sure why, but they don't sound as good as the One remixes of the early period stuff does to me. The remixes of all the stuff on Rubber Soul does sound great though, because on One, obviously there are no tracks from Rubber Soul. That's one of the albums that didn't have any singles released off of it. And as for the bonus LP with additional tracks, this is a bit of a curiosity, some of the inclusions here. They did make an interesting choice to include 3 covers, indicating like the original compilation only had original material, all Lennon and McCartney, And it's important to acknowledge that on their first two albums, and then also on Beatles for Sale and Help, they did utilize covers, and that was an important part of their early repertoire that helped them develop their own style. So including 3 of the covers here is important. So the covers that are included is Twist and Shout, Roll Over Beethoven, and You Really Got a Hold on Me, which I think are 3 good ones to choose from. I might have opted for Till There Was You or A Taste of Honey instead of maybe, but you know, I don't mind having those. The real benefit of this bonus LP is you get I Saw Her Standing There from the first album, which I consider a pretty essential track. So it's surprising it was never on the original compilation, even though it easily could have fit. You get You Can't Do That from the Hard Day's Night album, which is a bit of a curiosity. You get the B-side This Boy, which I think is a great B-side to include, especially being as important as it was on the first American album, Meet the Beatles. That's an important song to include for historical purposes, but it's irritating that they chose that, because what I find frustrating about the second side is Rubber Soul is already extremely well represented by 6 songs on the original compilation, but there are no songs from George Harrison on the original compilation. That's rectified here. You get If I Needed Someone, which is one of his standout early songs and one of the best songs on the Rubber Soul album, I think. But then we get a bunch of tracks from Revolver, which in the one hand is good because Revolver, again, was severely underrepresented. Only things included on the original compilation were the double A side, Eleanor Rigby, and Yellow Submarine. So the fact that we get more of the album tracks is interesting. It's just interesting which ones they chose. Tomorrow Never Knows closes it, and that's an obvious choice. That is, again, surprised that that wasn't on the original compilation, given that you do have A Day in the Life on the Blue album. So it was, the Red album seemed fairly truncated in relation to the Blue album in terms of what it included. So that's slightly rectified here. But then you get Here, There, and Everywhere, I'm Only Sleeping, Taxman, and Got to Get You Into My Life. All great songs. Interesting choices, I guess. But what's frustrating, and I cannot believe it's not on here, is Rain. How is Rain not included as one of the bonus tracks here? It would have been really nice for me to have that new stereo remix that's included in the Revolver box set on vinyl, because I don't want to go forking over that money for vinyl. Of course I have the singles collection, which has the original mono mix of Rain and Paperback Writer, but it would have been really nice to get that phenomenal stereo remix on vinyl. So it blows my mind that they would include This Boy, which is a good B-side, but not Rain, which is one of the best B-sides they ever did. It was incredible that it was not included on the original compilation, given the wealth of B-sides that are on the Blue album, and when they had the chance to rectify it for this bonus disc, they didn't. They could have kept the 5 tracks from Revolver they selected and still had room for Rain, because in keeping with the original compilation, the bonus disc is only like a half hour long, so this entire compilation spread across 3 LPs is only an hour and a half long. It could have easily fit on 2 LPs, honestly. So that's a bit of a missed opportunity, and it's frustrating. It would have really been nice to have that stereo remix of Rain included here. And I might have opted for a few other tracks as well that are overlooked. I mentioned in my very first chapter that the Beatles for Sale album is completely overlooked other than 8 Days a Week, and that's still true. There's no additional tracks from Beatles for Sale, when really any of the first 3, No Reply, I'm a Loser, Babies in Black, would have been fine inclusions. Those are all wonderful tracks, so I'm quite surprised that none of that is featured here. So yeah, the bonus disc, while it's nice to have, is a bit of a curiosity. And my overall thoughts on the D-Mix Remix, as the new liner notes call them, it's, on the one hand, it's striking to hear these things in such clarity, and on the other, it's almost too good, if you know what I mean, to the point where it's like, I don't think the original recordings ever sounded this good, or were supposed to sound this good. It's a bit strange that, so it is what it is, and I don't dislike it, but it was very strange. At first, when I first heard this, when I first bought it, I really liked it, but after going through their whole catalog of remixes and then coming to this last in the chronology just to tie up loose ends, I was like, wow, that sounds very different. It was very jarring to my ear. As compilations, these are still great starting points, and so if you're not going to get into the full catalog, I would argue that the Red and Blue albums were already a great starting point, and these expanded editions of them certainly sound a little bit more modern. So if you're a brand new Beatles fan, then these Red and Blue expanded albums are probably the single best place that you can start, because they include the best of the remixes in terms of the Blue album. And in this one, basically everything is a brand new stereo mix using this demix remix process. Personally, I don't think they sound as good as the 1+ remixes do, but given that there's more material here and it's more of a comprehensive overview of their first period, this is a very, very good starting point covering the first half of their career. So that's the Red album. Let's move on to the Blue album. This one arguably offers less value for money because most of these remixes are come straight from the last 5 chapters, the remixes we've already discussed, with the exception of a few tracks which are newly remixed using the demix remix process, which are, let's see, the 3 songs from Magical Mystery Tour. So I Am the Walrus, the title track, and Fool on the Hill. All You Need Is Love, Hello Goodbye, Hey Bulldog, Lady Madonna, Revolution, Ballad of John and Yoko, and Old Brown Shoe have all been given the demix remix treatment, which Hey Jude is not listed there. So I'm going to guess the Hey Jude remix is just the same remix that appeared on the 1+ compilation. I haven't A-B'd them, but it sounded pretty similar. And then everything else is just straight from the albums and box sets. So Strawberry Fields, Penny Lane, and the 4 tracks from Sgt. Pepper are included on that Sgt. Pepper remix box set. And then Back in the USSR, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, Obla Dee, Obla Da. White Album, Get Back, Don't Let Me Down. Those are both, I'm not sure if Get Back is if that's the 1+ mix, because the the Let It Be box set doesn't include a full mix of the single version. It just includes remixes of the album version, which is shortened. It did include a remix of Don't Let Me Down though, but I'm gonna guess those are probably the 1+ edition mixes. Ballad of John and Yoko, so those are brand new. Here Comes the Sun, Come Together, Something, Octopus's Garden, all straight from the Abbey Road remix. Let It Be, the single version, is included on the Let It Be box set and vinyl. Across the Universe, Long and Winding Road from the Let It Be remix. So this offers less new stuff in terms of new mixes, because most of this stuff has been previously released, given that this period is the period where Giles has focused most of his attention over the last 7 to 8 years working on the remixes that are already available. So less value for money, but still a good compilation, and it certainly sounds a heck of a lot better than the original one did. In terms of the demix remixes, they're less noticeable or bizarre here. Oh, All You Need Is Love did sound just slightly strange to me, and again, on Old Brown Shoe, the bass is just too overbearing, too much bass. Usually I'm a bass lover, but too much of a good thing is a bad thing. The one that stands out, and many people have pointed this online, is I Am the Walrus. I don't know what the hell is going on there, but that don't sound nothing like the original mix. It is, particularly at the end. The remix that's included in the Love Show, although it does obviously contain elements from other songs, is far superior to this, because I'm guessing using this demix remix process, they were finally able to isolate the radio broadcast from everything else, but it's completely way louder than everything else, to the point where as the song fades out, you can't even hear the orchestra and the band. It's literally just a bunch of weird sound effects that on the original mix are hidden, or honestly, it sounded like there were some things there that I don't remember hearing at all. I'm sure they're there, but they're just mixed so quietly in that original stereo and mono mix that it's hard to tell what they are. But at this point, they're just overbearing. And so, yeah, that was quite strange. I Am the Walrus has kind of been ruined by its remix. That's the only one that I would say is definitively worse than prior mixes. On the Red album, I have my thoughts about whether I like them or not, but none of them are worse than the original mix. I Am the Walrus is just a mess. I don't know what is going on there. Everything else sounds pretty great though, and particularly sides 3 and 4 sound fantastic. In terms of the extra material here, now this is really quite a hodgepodge, and it's extremely bizarre because it's not in chronological order. So it opens with Now and Then, which is the final Beatles track containing a mix from what was this from? So The same demos where Free as a Bird and Real Love came from during the anthology period also included Now and Then, but it was impossible at the time to separate the vocal from the piano, and it was of such poor sound quality that they decided not to move further with it, but George did apparently add overdubs at that time. Well, now using the demix remix technology, they've gone and they've separated it, and Ringo and Paul have completed the track with Giles Martin. Do I like it? It's a really good song. I like it a lot. I think it's cool. Do I think it's an official Beatles track? That's debatable. If George was still there and was able to add new stuff to it, you might be more able to argue that case, but like Paul does a slide solo in tribute to George, but it's like, it's not George though. And I guess George's guitar parts are in there as well as some percussion that he might have overdubbed, but back when they first tried it for the anthology project. But yeah, bit of an oddity that. It is a really pretty song though. It's classic Lennon composition. I certainly like the song itself, not necessarily the recording, but the song itself more than Real Love, but not as much as Free as a Bird. I think Free as a Bird, of the 3 post-Lennon tracks that they've done, is by far the best one. It's better than Now and Then and Real Love, but I do like Now and Then more than Real Love. It's a better song, I think. This is followed by 3 more selections from the White Album: Blackbird, Dear Prudence, and Glass Onion, which are fair enough. I do think Blackbird is a better song than Obla Di Obla Da, and I would have replaced Obla Di Obla Da on the original compilation with Blackbird. But as I said, the White Album's not my favorite album. Though those 3 tracks, I do like all 3 of them. I do like Dear Prudence and Glass Onion a lot. So having them in a separate context from the White Album is kind of nice, I suppose. And then we go backwards in time. Again, this is followed by Within You, Without You, a rather strange selection from Sgt. Pepper. I know it's an important song and I like it, but it's just a strange inclusion. I might have opted for Fixing a Hole or Lovely Rita, even though I know their whole point was to represent George more than he was on the original compilation. I'm not sure that's the best song that I would have picked. But hey, you know, Side 6 opens with Hey Bulldog, given the demix remix treatment. Sounds pretty good. No complaints about that. Nice to have that on a compilation on vinyl. I don't own that song anywhere else on vinyl. Oh Darling from Abbey Road. Again, I don't know if that's would have been my first choice for an additional selection, but it's fine. I Me Mine. I like George and I dig that song kinda, but I'm surprised that you would go with that one. Out of all the additional tracks you could pick off of Let It Be, why would you go with I Me Mine? Like, I like George, and I know they want to represent him, but I personally would have gone for Two of Us or Dig a Pony, something that or even I've Got a Feeling. I think those are all better songs than I Me Mine. Again, with the lush wall of sound stuff from Phil Spector, it kind of gets on my nerves. I guess it's there maybe for historical purposes, because after Abbey Road, I Me Mine is officially the last Beatles track recorded. It was only recorded because a sequence of George playing it was featured in the Let It Be documentary when it was finally cut, and so the 3 Beatles, Paul, George, and Ringo went in to record it, and that was the last official Beatles recording session. And then this collection closes with I Want You from Abbey Road. Again, strange inclusion. I guess it's a pretty heavy, cool song, so I can see why that one's there, but it's just strange that it ends the compilation. Funny side note, which I learned from reading the Abbey Road book, is that initially the LP was going to have its sides reversed. Side 1 was going to have the big epic and end with I Want You. Side 1 was going to have the big epic and end with the end, and side 2 was going to end with I Want You, She's So Heavy. Thank goodness they decided to reverse that decision, because the end of the medley is a much more climactic and fitting ending than the end of I Want You, ending abruptly as it does, and it just is, yeah, it's strange, but it's cool. I mean, I really like that song. It's a highlight of that album for sure. It's just, it's surprising that they went with that. I suppose it made more sense than pulling out anything from the medley would have made, but I don't know. There's some other stuff that I would have gone for, like maybe some more B-sides. It would have been nice to have a new stereo mix of The Inner Light. I would have maybe opted for that over I, Me, Mine, or even Within You, Without You, honestly. And maybe opted for like Because or something from Abbey Road. So my choices for additional tracks would have been different. But again, the same thing applies, that this, by and large, if you're brand new to the Beatles, these two compilations, the expanded versions of them, are probably the most comprehensive compilation overview that you can get. And so for that reason, they come highly recommended to new fans. To traditional fans, they're a bit of an oddity, bit of a hodgepodge. I suppose I'd give both of them like a 4 out of 5 because they're nice to own and they do sound good, but except for the couple exceptions I mentioned. But it just strange compilation these are. It's nice to hear some of the stuff with on Rubber Soul given a new mix, given a fresher mix. Although I honestly think that 1987 stereo mix is already pretty fine. I don't really think a remix of that album is merited, because people have been asking Giles to do that, I guess. And I guess some people were frustrated that this came out before any work on Rubber Soul, the whole album, was done. But half of the album is represented on the expanded Red album anyway, so, you know. As far as Beatles remixes go, I don't necessarily think these are as essential as... I thought the 1+ remixes were truly outstanding, and they didn't do any demix remixing, trying to separate things and add stereo mixes to stuff that never had stereo mixes. Like Love Me Do, For Me to You, and She Loves You are all still in mono on that compilation. And the new stereo remixes there sound fantastic. Here they just sound a bit muddy and strange to me. Could be the pressing, but I have a feeling this AI system trained to separate the stems is probably not perfect, and it has some errors. Because you'd have to imagine, even when they overdubbed stuff, there would be some bleed through of prior tracks. So it would have a hell of a time trying to separate those. Like, I know how sine wave harmonics work and stuff, and how you can go and separate a sine wave into its component parts. So it must be doing some version of that, but maybe they need to fine-tune it a little more. So these are strange releases to me, but I do like them, and I was excited to see these get done because I always wanted the Red album and Blue album on vinyl, but just never got around to buying them. So getting these and having the complete set of remixes on vinyl is great. And they're good for brand new Beatles fans. So for that reason, they would come recommended. So that's all of the remixes of everything. We've talked all the archival stuff and pretty much all the officially released material that is available. The only things that I didn't cover were the 8 Days a Week documentary, because I haven't seen it, because I just learned about it. I didn't know that was a thing, or that it was an officially licensed documentary, so I might pick that up and check it out and do an update. And then Live at the Hollywood Bowl, I've never picked that up on vinyl, and as far as I know, it's never been released on CD. I could be wrong about that. If I'm wrong, let me know, because they talked about that album in the anthology documentary, so I've never heard that. There's that, and then I haven't heard the Beatles story either, the American album. So other than those 3 things, we've pretty much covered everything there is to talk about in this series when it comes to the Beatles catalog. It's amazing that so much money and so much stuff can be made out of a career that lasted a little over 7 years. Kind of unbelievable when you think about it, but it is an important career, and the band is extremely important, so it makes sense that their stuff would be revitalized and kind of brought into the modern era, because it has to be. Otherwise, modern audiences are not going to hear this stuff. So, you know, the questions I set out to answer when I started this deep dive are all of the Beatles overrated. No, they're not overrated, but I do think even some of the books in the deluxe series are too quick to praise them when to be completely honest, the Beatles did make some mistakes in their career. The White Album is a classic album, so I won't cite that as an example, but I do think they went too far in some cases, particularly Magical Mystery Tour film. I think it's bizarre. Even though it's fun to watch, it's just so bizarre. I don't know if it's actually a good, lasting piece of art. I don't necessarily think that the Let Be Get Back period is indicative of them at their best, etc., etc. So I don't think they were perfect. I don't think they had a perfect 100% flawless career. They made mistakes. both personally and professionally. But they're not overrated. They are considered the greatest band of all time because of the boundaries they broke and the fact that they got out on top. That's the big thing. They left on top. They did not put out a Love Beach or a Final Cut or some other, or God forbid, a Calling All Stations. Genesis fans will know what I'm talking about. So many bands, they could end on a high note and they choose to go back and screw everything up. You could argue that they almost did that with the Now and Then thing, but the fact that it's a good song means that I guess it was worth putting out. And it's good that there's so much visual and audio material to cover their history together, so that people like me who did not live at the time have a chance to kind of put ourselves into what it might have been like to be there, as well as experience why their music is still important with the benefit of hindsight. Are they the greatest band of all time? I mean, nobody pushed limits like they did. Nobody wrote as many catchy and hit songs as they did. There's been nothing like it before or since. Are they my favorite band of all time? They're up there. They're top 3 for sure. There's other bands that maybe I go back to more often just because their music resonates with me more. I mean, Genesis in particular is one of just... I absolutely adore Genesis. But bands like that wouldn't exist if the Beatles hadn't come first. They had to break the boundaries so that other people could continue to explore and see what was possible. So what they did was absolutely essential to pop culture and music history, and they did some of the best work that any musicians on the planet have ever done. Yes, they're the greatest band of all time. At least the greatest pop band. You got to go at least that far. They're the greatest pop band of all time. There's been nothing like it that even comes close in the years that have come since. Alright, after going through everything, all of the remixes, all of the archival documentaries, the books, and the original albums, what would I say out of this series are the most essential things that you should buy if you want to have a complete, comprehensive, and overarching Beatles collection that just tells the story and gives you as much insight as possible without going too haywire and getting into the nitty-gritty, which you might want to do if you're a diehard fan like me and want to know everything about anything. But if not, and you just want the starting point, well, a good starting point is definitely these. These actually come highly recommended. The Red and Blue albums, expanded editions, and even just the original editions are a great compilation that might tell you, okay, this period might be more interesting to me than another period. If you've done that and you've decided, okay, you want to go through the whole catalog, the things that you need to have a complete Beatles collection. The 2009 stereo box set, or otherwise just remastered stereo versions of every album. I'm going with the stereo and not the mono because the stereo includes everything. And if you want an approximation of mono, if you have a player like I do, you can just do a fold down mix where the left and right channels are combined. Obviously that's not a perfect recreation of the dedicated mono mixes, but it's an idea, and if you're displeased by the hard panning on some of the stuff, that will eliminate a little bit of that problem without creating any phase issues. So there's that. This 2009 stereo box set, because it gives you a little overview of each album. It gives you nice recording notes that for me were like my Bible growing up on how to multi-track before I even read the more detailed notes about what they were specifically doing and the takes they were making and hearing the outtakes. And it has everything. It's got all the officially released material from their time together as a band. And from Sgt. Pepper onward, the stereo mixes tend to be pretty decent. Okay, that's essential. All 14 albums remastered. That's for 100% essential. Next essential thing, Let It Be Naked. You cannot hear Let It Be without hearing Let It Be Naked as its companion. I say that as someone who heard those two things 10 years apart, and now that I've heard Let It Be Naked, I now understand the way that album was supposed to sound, and it's actually a really great record when it's heard that way. Let It Be Naked is essential. In fact, I didn't say this in my Let It Be box set video, but I almost feel like they could have just combined everything that summarizes that period. The Get Back documentary, the Get Back book, all of the material that was already in that box set, Let It Be Naked, and the remixes. They could have just combined that all into one uber super deluxe box set, and they didn't do that, so that was a bit of a missed opportunity. But On the plus side, it does mean that you can just get stuff separately, and Let It Be Naked is absolutely essential. Third essential thing, the anthology DVD documentary. If you want the first-hand experience told from the Beatles, from their own mouths, as well as the best visual documentation of their career, it's that documentary, and it's well worth seeing. It's just 10 hours of sheer glory that really give you a deeper appreciation of what was going on behind the music and how what they did reflected the popular culture and the revolutionary times around them. Absolutely amazing documentary, well worth seeing if you want the complete experience. Fourth thing, the OnePlus promo collection. If you want to just dip your toe into the remixes, as I said earlier in this same video, the OnePlus remixes, I prefer them to the new Red and Blue remixes because they're not doing the demix remix thing, but they add so much clarity and just chiminess and beauty to the original songs, particularly in the early period, and songs from the later period sound really great as well. Having those promo videos restored in full HD is amazing and is absolutely necessary, I think, to see those. Many of them are included in the anthology documentary, but to see them fully restored in HD with, in most cases, a really nice 5.1 soundtrack is great, and the documentation about the songs themselves and the videos is phenomenal. Of all those releases, OnePlus is one of my absolute favorites, and it comes very highly recommended. It's extremely easy to watch and is quite an enjoyable viewing experience. And then, let's see. So that's four things. The stereo box set, Let It Be Naked, anthology, OnePlus. And then the fifth essential thing, I think, is the Sgt. Pepper. I would argue the entire box set, because the 5.1 mix is so outstanding, and having the book to read about how they constructed the album and having the session material to back it up, it is their most revered album for a reason, because it really did change the culture and it changed the way records are made. So if there's one album where it's worth hearing that album constructed from the ground up, take by take, overdub by overdub, and seeing the documentary that's included in that box set about how it's done, it's that one. That one is the best of the box set series. It gives you the most value for money in terms of what's included, and the book with that box set is absolutely gorgeous, and what it details is amazing. So for sure, that's a big deal, is the Sgt. Pepper box set. But if not the box set, at the very least you should pick up a vinyl copy of the stereo remix of Sgt. Pepper, because the stereo remix from 2017 is, I think, the most definitive way to hear the album. It sounds better than the original stereo mix by light years, and it's a good adaptation of what the band saw as the mono mix for the modern era. So those are the 5 things I would say are absolutely essential and need to be in your collection. The original stereo mixes, remastered, or the mono mixes, but I would say the stereo box set if you can find it. I see it retails around $200 now for like refurbished copies, which is pretty expensive, but you do get 16 CDs and a DVD with it, and tons of gorgeous liner notes. The anthology DVD, the OnePlus Blu-ray and CD box set, the Let It Be Naked CD, and the Sgt. Pepper, if not the box set, at the very least the stereo remix. If you have those 5 things in your collection and nothing else, you'd have a fairly complete and comprehensive Beatles collection. If you want to expand it and have some fun and start adding more things, the other super deluxe editions, well, Abbey Road comes the highest recommended of the others, although the remix of Revolver is well worth checking out. Maybe just pick up the standalone vinyl if you don't want to get the whole box set. This is absolutely incredible. I would not recommend this as like an early fan purchase, because you'll experience more joy listening to this and get a lot more out of it if you've heard all of the other albums leading up to it and can pick out how they used the different elements to use this. But this is phenomenal and comes highly recommended as well. And then lastly, some sideline things which would be nice to have for historical context. The BBC and Anthology 1 are both pretty cool collections that are well worth owning. And that's it. That's everything. So we've talked about almost everything the Beatles have to offer, bar just a couple things, and overall, those are my thoughts. Let me know if you agree with me. Let me know what your favorite albums are. As I said in my previous video, my top 3 Beatles albums are Revolver, Abbey Road, and Sgt. Pepper. And in 4th place, probably Rubber Soul would come in right there. Let me know what you think. Which Beatles songs are your favorites? Which Beatles albums are your favorites? Which of these videos was your favorite? Which box sets do you not have that you might go pick up? Which ones do you have? And what are your thoughts on them? Let me know. Alright. Thank you for watching till the end of the series. I hope that I was able to provide some kind of insight. I know there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other videos on YouTube about the Beatles, but hopefully the perspective of a 26-year-old music lover who grew up with this music, that just learned to adore it, and then expanded my collection to include everything about anything, because thankfully the Beatles are a band that have willingly, or at least Yoko, Olivia, Paul and Ringo have allowed us to peek behind the curtain of their career. And it's spectacular, especially for someone who was not there at the time and didn't get to experience what the Beatlemania and the buzz around those albums was all about. So for me, it's great to have all this stuff. Alright, that's all for now. Thank you for watching. Take care. Since this was such a long series, I think I'm going to take a break from posting for a while. I'll probably take a few weeks off. I'm not sure what I want to do next. I'm not sure what my next topic will be, if I'll do a deep dive, if I'll just do some reviews. I have some music demos that I might work on and post those as well. But for anybody who's a regular viewer, just know that you're not going to see anything for the next couple weeks. Thank you for watching thus far, and I hope you got something out of it. That's all for now. Bye.